God has always given us signs from above.
Hi, this is Lucy B, and welcome to Signs from Above. Do you know that Jesus gave really two big commandments? Do you know what these commandments are? The most important one is love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus stated that there is no commandment greater than these. Think about this. If we go back to the 10 commandments, love again is the most important commandment. Besides the fourth commandment, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, God truly had to break it down so that we would follow these commandments. So let's go over them. Number 1, you shall have no other God before me. Number 2, you shall not make an idol. Number 3, you shall not take the name of your Lord, your God, in vain. All three of these commandments are not something that we would do if we truly love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our souls, and all our mind, and all our strength. So what about commandments number 5 through 10? Honor your father and your mother. Number 6, you shall not murder. Number 7, you shall not commit adultery. Number 8, you shall not steal. Number 9, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And number 10, you shall not covet. Which covet means desiring something that belongs to someone else, which could cause you to be jealous. I mean this respectfully, but God truly had to dumb this down for us so that we could understand what love means. We throw the love word around and don't really truly think about the meaning of it. So tell me if these true stories are of love. Let's focus on commandment number 1. You shall have no other God before me. So here's story number 1, and it's addiction to phone. Do you know that people spend an average of 4.8 hours a day on their phone? Many people feel completely lost if they by chance lose or forget their phones, as if they can't function without them. So I found this story, and it was on Christianity Today, and let me just read her story. Scrolling through Twitter on my train commute home, I found a photo of an odd-looking phone. It's black and paper white. A former coworker of mine had been using the low-tech phone for about a year. I was fascinated because I'd been thinking about ditching my smartphone altogether. The post unintentionally revealed a fit for me. After a few days of watching product review videos, I placed my order. I bought my first cell phone in my mid-30s when I moved to New York City 11 years ago, where I still work as a college professor. It was a dumb phone that mainly lived in my backpack. I eventually eased into a refurbished iPhone about 6 years ago. The iPhone eventually moved to my backpack to my front left pocket. I never put social media apps on it, just web and email. Recently, I added a mindless brick-smashing game and used it to divert my attention on the train ride home. I'm familiar with the pangs of addiction. I used to smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day for 10 years. In addiction's loving arms, I could no longer go without a hit. 15 or 20 minutes after my last drag, my anxieties would be frenzied out of control and needed for a relief. My entire being grew restless until it rested in a smoke 40 times a day. It was exhausting. Making myself still, mentally or physically, has always been hard for me. I often have many irons in the fire, but maintaining the discipline of stillness requires a certain level of security with oneself and with God. My smartphone, on the other hand, offered an all-too-easy way to focus my constant motion without truly slowing me down. Scripture commands weekly stillness, Sabbath. Our bodies are designed for the daily stillness of sleep, where we trust the sovereignty of God to uphold all things together and my soul to keep while we slumber. The burden to find rest in Jesus. Matthew 11:28. And yet my phone was becoming my main source of mental burden. It's always on. It provides instant access to work that needs doing. Christians should be marked by a sense of stillness and practicing of stillness. If I'm honest about it, I'm terrified of being still because it quickly affirms that I am not in charge. Though my app usage might seem restrained compared to some of my students, I always felt a vague sense of guilt that I spent the whole ride home reading news, checking emails, looking at my social media on the browser, and smashing bricks. I recognized the addictive pains of this phone in my pocket. Every semester, I challenge my freshman students to go a week without screens. No texts, no streaming, no music. I've been chronicling their reactions to this challenge. In past years, my students were hooked on Instagram. But in 2021, students say they can't do without music. Music helps them to drown out, distract, close out, and numb themselves to the real world. These are their words. By musically meditating, their emotions, reflection, and contemplations seem to be collaterally damaged. I introduced the digital challenge after researching the effects of smartphones on teenagers. I thought it might be for a lively illustration for a book I was writing on the power of ritual to shape our understanding. The research was not encouraging. It's all the things we've already heard. Our phone monkeys with our neurology, social media apps inflame depression and anxiety, and most troublesome, from my perspective, the 24/7 demands of their attentions come mainly from their parents. They are always expected to be on. For my students, rest, boredom, silence, and other human rituals taught across scripture were deemed just unattainable. Keeping their phones out of their hands and off their bodies seemed like a dream. And when they dismiss such dream as unrealistic, other dreams can get shoved off with it too. Sexual self-discipline, contentment, generous giving, giving up admirable opportunities, and a host of practices that characterize Christian maturity. Many students reported to me that they hadn't experienced undistracted boredom for as long as they could remember. When stillness was unavoidable, most reported anxiety to the point that they had to get a fix of music to avoid having a panic attack. These are their words. A week after seeing the light phone on Twitter, mine arrive, one colleague described it as a tiny Kindle with a built-in phone. That's about right. It makes calls, sends texts, plays audio, navigates, and has an alarm and a calculator. It doesn't take photos or allow apps. I always show up with a green text bubble in my friends' iPhone chats. So what's it like to switch to a phone designed to be used as little as possible? The first week, I kept pulling it out of my pocket as the iPhone had trained me to do. The dumb phone quickly retrained me out of that old habit. It was just look at me and I at it. Then I'd realize that there was nothing to do. Tap it a few times as if I had just sent an important email, and feeling somewhat silly, settle it back in my pocket. So Matt Wiley, he is a doctoral student at a Christian university whose phone had inspired her, had already removed social media from his phone, but was lured in by news and email. I already pretty minimal with my iPhone use, but I still found myself using it more than I wanted, he told me. I found that I would feel my little moments. I would just pull out my phone. I don't even know what I would do without it. Mindless clicking. I also found myself constantly responding to emails, reading the news, and listening to podcasts. I have little silence in my life except during intentional quiet times, but those times are almost always in the morning. By evening, my mind is filled with discussions, thoughts, dilemmas, emails, and family matters. By dividing the phone from the computer, a few unexpected benefits flowed. First, I started having a concentrated time where I could do more focused work. When I was away from the computer, I felt away, free from a sense of urgency to check. Aaron Griffith, a history professor at Whitworth College, had been using a low-tech phone since last fall. He noticed not only the Sabbath-inducing benefits when there's nothing to do on the phone, but also it allowed him to focus on his work. He loves that he can go to a coffee shop with a book and his phone and still be able to read the book. The phone doesn't draw his attention away. Griffin also admitted to enjoying the app-accessible world. Even appreciates the low-tech texting is not fun to use. It's effective, he says, but not going to suck you in. The phone's touchable respond a little more lethargically than I want. It forces me to slow down, be patient, and make decisions about whether I really want to text or just wait to talk to a person. Mainly, I feel I've gotten my brain back, but also my sensory attention. The number one benefit for me became clarity of mind and time to think. a month in, and I feel much more coherent in my own headspace. After my body realized that there's no need to pull out my phone for anything, I began attending to smells, sounds, and sights more than before. My prayer has always been increased in more of the mode of intercession than pleading for personal favors. What I've learned from my students and myself is none of this is magic. I can be busy and always on, regardless of whether I have a smartphone or not. Making the switch just shook up my daily ritual, enough to make me rethink how I should be physically and emotionally navigating the space into which God has put me in. For me, the most terrifying line in Psalms has always been, "Be still and know that I am God," which is in Psalms 46:10. In unremarkable ways, moving to a low-tech phone eased my terror of stillness by forcing quiet into a dozen little junctures of my day. But that doesn't mean we have to switch devices, deleting emails or social apps, turning our phone on airplane mode for periods of time, or switching to grayscale screens are all ways to help us reevaluate our relationship with the computer in our pocket. So this story brings me to 2 Bible verses. The first in which states Mark 12:28-30. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked them, "Of all the commandments, which is the most important?" The most important one, Jesus answered, is this: "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind and all your strength." The second verse, which God spoke of the 10 commandments, and the first is in Exodus 23. "You shall have no other God before me." So when we are home, it will be wonderful. But if you are still here, we still have work to do. So keep an eye out for the signs around you. Until our next episode, walk with the confidence that you're guided and protected, with Jesus lighting your path and revealing messages along your journey.